Thank you for the opportunity to interact with you. I would like to begin by setting the legal and governance context that brings us together today. On July 25, 2025, the Supreme Court of India issued a landmark judgment that fundamentally changes how student mental health is treated under Indian law. This judgment does not view mental health as a welfare activity or a counseling service. It establishes it as a mandatory, non-delegable institutional duty of care, binding on every educational institution in the country. The most important shift is this. After this judgment, institutions are not assessed on goodwill or post-incident response. They are assessed on what systems existed beforehand, whether leadership oversight was exercised, and whether compliance can be shown in real time. This is the context in which Briea has designed the student mental health compliance system. What you will see today is not a counseling model and not a technology showcase. It is an institution-wide compliance and duty of care system designed specifically to operationalize the Supreme Court's directions, generate auditable evidence, and protect institutional leadership through documented due diligence. As we move through the presentation, we will show how this system works in practice, how it aligns directly with the court's expectations, and how it allows institutions to meet their obligations at scale, without burdening faculty, administrators, or students. With that context established, let me take you through how this system functions and why it is designed the way it is. Let me be unequivocal. Student mental health is no longer a welfare initiative or a counseling function. That chapter is closed. Accountability under this judgment rests squarely with the institution and its leadership. It is non-delegable. When institutions are examined, the questions are stark and evidence-driven. Did students have continuous access to support? Did the institution act before crises, not after complaints? Were risks identified, escalated, and followed up? And can the institution prove this with records? This creates a fundamental shift for leadership. Student mental health now requires direct governance-level oversight. The rest of this presentation addresses one critical issue. How does an institution meet this legal duty of care continuously, at scale, and with defensible evidence, without disrupting its core academic mission? That is what we will now walk through. The single question institutions are asked is not what was done afterward, but this: what structured system was in place before the incident to identify risk, provide support, and ensure follow-up? This is where many institutions face exposure. The appointment of counselors, circulars, advisories, or helplines, while well-intentioned, are not considered sufficient. Under scrutiny, institutions are examined on hard operational facts. And without structured systems and contemporaneous evidence, even well-meaning institutions struggle to demonstrate that they met their mandated duty of care. This gap between intent and provable compliance is what the next section addresses. It is important to draw a sharp line between what does not prove compliance and what actually does. Appointing counselors or committees does not establish compliance. Circulars, posters, helpline numbers, or statements made after an incident do not either. All of these demonstrate intent. They do not demonstrate action sustained over time. Under the Supreme Court's directions, institutions are expected to show something far more concrete: that students had regular, ongoing access to support, that the institution reached out proactively, not only when issues were reported, that concerns were followed up, not closed after a single interaction, and that actions were recorded at the time they occurred, not reconstructed later. In the current legal framework, it is operating systems and contemporaneous records, not documents, that determine whether an institution has fulfilled its duty of care. This distinction is the foundation for what comes next. Under the Supreme Court's judgment, defensible compliance is not theoretical. It is practical, verifiable, and evidence-based. Defensible compliance requires structure, clear escalation pathways for moderate and serious cases, tracked follow-ups until resolution or appropriate referral, and time-stamped records that show activity across defined periods, not isolated moments. This is how compliance is ultimately judged. Institutions that can produce a clear chronology of actions, show continuity of engagement, and demonstrate leadership-level oversight are viewed as having exercised reasonable, responsible, and lawful duty of care. This is the compliance benchmark against which systems must now be designed. At this point, the discussion shifts from obligation to execution. This is the context in which Briea is introduced. The Briea Student Mental Health Compliance System is purpose-built to operationalize the Supreme Court's July 25, 2025 directions as a living institutional system. Briea ensures continuous, institution-approved access to support, independent of individual faculty vigilance. It enables proactive, regular engagement, so risks are identified even when students do not self-report. Stress and vulnerability indicators are captured systematically, with defined escalation and follow-up applied consistently across cases. At the leadership level, Briea provides central visibility and oversight through structured dashboards and reports. As actions occur, time-stamped records are generated automatically, creating contemporaneous compliance evidence without operational friction. Briea operates continuously independent of individuals. With this foundation established, the next section shows how this system functions in practice and how it enables institutions to meet their duty of care at scale, defensibly and sustainably. Let us now translate Supreme Court expectations into clear operational reality. First, continuous access. The court is explicit. Mental health support cannot be limited to office hours, availability of counselors, or occasional arrangements. Access must be continuous. Briea delivers this through 24/7, always-on access, via apps and familiar WhatsApp interfaces. Second, institution-wide responsibility. The Supreme Court makes it clear that mental health duty of care must rest with the institution itself, not with individual staff members. Briea is deployed across the entire institution, with centralized control and uniform coverage across departments and programs. Responsibility is embedded in the system, not left to personal initiative. This is how expectation becomes execution. The second set of Supreme Court expectations goes to the heart of prevention and process. The court is clear. Institutions are expected to identify and address risk before crises occur, not only after complaints are raised. Briea achieves this through voice-first AI that proactively checks in with students. Regular engagement allows early identification of stress, disengagement, or risk, even when students do not self-report. Second, structured processes, not ad hoc responses. The Supreme Court does not accept informal, one-off actions or memory-based follow-ups. Briea operates through defined engagement cycles and workflows, ensuring consistent handling of concerns across all students. The outcome is clear. Responses are structured, reliable, and repeatable, not ad hoc. The third and most critical expectation is what happens after risk is identified, and whether the institution can prove it acted responsibly. The Supreme Court expects that once a concern is identified, the institution responds decisively and follows through. Briea enforces this through defined escalation pathways for moderate and high-risk cases, with follow-ups tracked until resolution or appropriate referral. The result is straightforward. Institutional response is traceable, consistent, and defensible. Second, the court requires institutions to show what was done and when it was done. Briea generates automatic, time-stamped records of student interactions, proactive outreach, risk identification, and follow-up actions, created as events occur, not reconstructed later. At this point, the decision before institutional leadership is clear, unavoidable, and governance level. There are only two paths. The first is to continue with partial, informal arrangements, policies and circulars, committees, etc. When examined, this path leaves institutions explaining intent, effort, and good faith, but unable to demonstrate compliance. The second is to adopt a Supreme Court-aligned compliance system, a continuous institution-wide system, proactive engagement and early risk identification, defined escalation and follow-up, and time-stamped records that establish duty of care from July 25, 2025 onward. This is why the court treats this as a governance decision, not an operational one. That decision determines whether the institution stands exposed or defensible when accountability is tested. This is the point where intent must convert into action. Acting now protects students. Acting now protects institutional leadership. If you would like to initiate a leadership-level review, assess your current readiness, or understand what defensible compliance looks like for your institution, please take the next step now. Call us at 93130-16890 or email us at wellness@thebria.com. Do not wait for an incident, an inquiry, or an inspection to drive the decision. This is the moment to act deliberately, decisively, and responsibly.